Hello and welcome to the Devon Man Shed. Now I've had a hankering to do a diorama for quite some time. Now I've had some experience regarding scenery because I've got a model railway stood up on its end down here. I have done some scenery on that, so I've got a little bit of experience, but I didn't think I had enough really to do it in front of a camera. So from the outset I decided to not bother to do a video of the diorama as well as the tank build, because this is something else that's out my comfort zone. I've never actually built a tank before, so I've no idea of the procedures, or the best procedures I should say, of assembling one. So with those two things in mind, I decided to do this off camera. But I've got to the stage now where I've more or less built the tank, and I thought to myself, well, let's do a video starting from where I've got to and see how it goes. So what we've got is a 1/35 scale Tamiya Churchill Mk.VII. This is an old kit. This is from 1977, I think I saw a copyright. So it's a very old kit, but I'll tell you what, it went together really nice. Probably showing its age a little bit regarding the not necessarily the quality of the parts, but the actual design of it. You know, I think the newer tanks are probably a lot better. But nonetheless, it was a nice little kit to put together. I enjoyed it, and what I intend to do here is weather it as well. Obviously, it's going to go onto a diorama, so I need to sort of weather it, and that's something else that I have done in the past, but I've never done on camera. So all this is going to be a bit perhaps fragmented. I don't know how well the video will turn out, but what we'll do is in the next shot, rather than where I normally just show you the contents of the box, obviously there's nothing in it, it's empty, all the parts have been glued, we'll just move forward to where I am with it at the moment, and we'll take the video from there. So I'll see you in the next clip. Right, so what we've got, folks, is three sub-assemblies. We've got the lower hull, the turret, and the upper hull here. Now the lower hull took most of the time because of the wheels. Now these wheels you can actually glue together but still be able to revolve. I haven't bothered doing that. I've glued them, they're all stuck together, and they won't move. Now the reason why you can glue these so that they can revolve is the fact that inside here there's actually some battery terminals, so there must have been an aftermarket battery pack you could put into this, so that would actually work. So that explains why you can get away with having those wheels turn. Now the drive wheels and the idle gears, they're all revolving. They're quite nice actually to revolve, because I've just sort of played around with the tracks, and they're quite helpful that they're not glued, because you can sort of position the track a lot easier. So that went together really well. I've done some filling, only natural, not a lot though. The next step was the upper hull here. This has got the exhaust system been glued on, that was all separate. The shovels here were all separate. Most of the detail was glued on the side here. This will probably be 90% sprayed green. So what detailing or different colours I will need, I'm not going to make too much of a fuss about it, because this is actually going to be weathered. So I'm not too bothered about the detail being sort of perfect. The gun turret, this was a delight to put together. This was really nice. I've chosen the doors open because what I'm going to do, I've got figures that come with the kit and I'm going to use figures. So there's going to be two figures here and one kneeling on the tank. So that's the reason why I've glued these open. You don't have to. There's a separate molding you can use to close it off. Now we come to the tracks. Now I've decided that these tracks need to be sprayed before they go being applied to the actual model itself. I was in two minds how to go about it. I've decided to obviously prime them. I should use a matte black and an aluminium brush, dry brush effect, and then I shall be introducing the brown. Now because this is going on a diorama, I'm going to have to build the diorama first because I don't want to go weathering this tank, and then when I put it on the diorama there's a distinct difference in shade. So I'm going to have to make the diorama, build it, weather it, make it look realistic, and then whatever I use on that diorama I shall use on the tracks and on the rest of the tank here as well. So that's what I plan to do with the tracks. I intend to now prime those three components separately because I have no idea what can be seen and what can't, so I'm just going to spray everything. I've chosen a 324, which is a common dark green camouflage. I've used this on my mosquito build I think, but this is a common colour. The Tamiya green, I've sort of gathered some information online about that. The Tamiya green they seem to think is a little bit too dark. I've got a feeling this is slightly lighter, so I think I'm going in the right direction with it. I've got a last bit of this primer which I want to use up because I want to throw this in the bin. I'm still struggling to get my Badger primer. Nobody seems to have it. I don't know what the problem is, but if push comes to shove I'll just use an ordinary grey matte grey paint to use as a primer, but I think I've got enough in there to do the job. The figures here, I've obviously got to have to prime those as well. Actually this sprue here is contains a figure of a Frenchman with his cart offering provisions to the passing tank crew, and I don't know whether I'm going to use this or not, whether this will end up on the diorama. I'll wait and see, decide what to do with that. But these are the figures, and these are going to have to be well, I'll lay a brush and primer and paint them, brush paint them. So that's where we are with it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give this lot a coat of primer, and then I shall give it a coat of green all over, and then I shall assemble it. I still have some parts that I need to glue on the end of here, but I think that's the only parts I'm going to glue after painting. So I'm going to go and do that off camera. I ain't going to bother showing you the priming stage of it. I'll show you the priming, the finish of the primer when I'm done, and we'll take it from there. So I'll see you in the next clip. Right, so here we have the three components sprayed with the primer. I just about had enough of that primer to complete that job. So I'm now out of primer, so I'm going to visit my model shop on Monday, which I hope will be open, because a majority of the shops seem to be opening for business. I've got quite a little stock of items that I need to get. Most of my stuff I get off Amazon because I tend to bulk buy, but there are things that I use regarding the assembly of these models that I very rarely go through, and they don't warrant the extra packaging postage, so I'm hoping that the visit to the model shop I can restock myself, and I'll have a look at the primers, see what primers he's got there, because the Badger primers that I started to use, which were absolutely brilliant, there doesn't seem to be any distribution in this country for them. Everybody who's supposed to stock them are completely out of them. Anyway, what I decided to do originally was to glue this upper hole to the bottom hole and then spray it green, but I've decided now to keep these three separate, and then what I hope to do then is obviously spray what I've sprayed with the primer green, and then I shall probably glue this upper hole to the bottom hole. The turret itself locates, it's got two location points there where you drop them down and you twist it, so this is movable, so this isn't actually glued to the upper hole. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and spray this with that 324 green, and then I'll get back to you as to what I plan to do next, so I'll see you in the next clip. Right, now before I start, I want to reiterate really that this isn't a how to do video. As I explained earlier in the video, I'm out of my comfort zone doing this. I'm doing it on a wing and a prayer, and I might well be making a lot of mistakes along the way. I don't know. If I am, feel free to sort of comment, but what I've basically done here is I've made a 12 by 8 base using a bit of ply, and I've put a border around it. I'm a bit shy of wood to make boxes nowadays, and it's been knocked up rather crude. I've got different thicknesses of ply here because it's all I had, so the actual box itself is a bit crude, but it makes no odds really. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, because at the end of the day that border is just basically going to act as a border to stop the plaster of Paris from running out. So talking of plaster of Paris, that's something else I've never used before. On the scenery on my model railway, I just happened to have some tile adhesive at the time, and I used that to sort of sculpture landscapes and things. But I decided to try plaster of Paris. Now I went on Amazon after some of this, and this came through the post. Now this looks like it's branded as a modelling casting powder, but it was actually advertised as plaster of Paris. So is it plaster of Paris, or is it some special derivative of it? I really don't know, but either way I'm going to give this a go. Apparently it's a kilo of powder to 3/4 of a litre of water, and the idea is that you actually introduce the powder to the water, not the other way round. And I have noticed also a lot of the guys that use this on YouTube, the less stirring you do, the longer you've got time to actually manipulate it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go off camera and mix this up and pour this all over this polystyrene here. This is 1/2 inch polystyrene at the bottom and 2 bits of 1/2 inch polystyrene PVA glued to give a 3D raised effect. This down here is going to be grass, so this is going to be more or less flat. I've placed a tank in there to get some idea what sort of depth and width for the tracks, because I'm depicting something here where several tanks have gone through and they've created this track. Now a lot of guys out there also
have spare tank tracks where they can make an imprint of the track. Now I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this with mine because it might bugger them up, so I'm not too sure if I'm going to depict any tank tracks or not. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, I'm going to go off camera now, as I said, and I'll get that poured over, and we'll take a look at it and see where it's come out. So I'll see you then. Right, I think I've had success here. I mixed 250 grams of powder to 200 millilitres of water. I had no idea if it was going to be enough, and it turned out to be absolutely bang on. It was a little bit watery when I first started to use it, but after a couple of minutes it started to thicken up, and rather than use a bit of wood, which I tried and I didn't get on with it, I ended up using a big brush, and I found it a lot easier to use it, to actually manipulate it as well. And the nice thing is the brush is cleaned up afterwards as well, so that's a bonus. The tracks here I find are probably a little bit too deep. I might make those a little bit shallower. I don't know how, but I need to bring the tank up. They're a little bit too deep. But other than that, for my first attempt, I'm quite happy with it. I mean, there's probably guys out there who are probably looking at it and thinking all these lumps, they shouldn't be there, but it is my first attempt, and I shall probably learn from it. Now, plaster of Paris is porous, that I do know, so I need to seal this. I was going to use a PVA tap water mix to just seal it, but I've decided to paint it. Now this is going to be browns and greens, so I've got this paint here that I've generated, where I've been tipping me odd bits of paint in there, so I should be using that to give it its first sort of coat, and also I'll paint the outside as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and see what we can do next. So I'll see you then. Right, so the diorama's been painted, so anything I apply now shouldn't soak into that plaster of Paris. I mentioned earlier about the tracks that I've made here, or rather the trenches that the tracks have made. I felt that they're a little bit deep, and I still do, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to build these tracks up a little bit so that that tank sits a little higher, because I think it's out of scale at the moment. That's far too deep. Now I intend to use that garden mud that I showed you, but I'm not too sure whether I'm going to put some heavier ballast down first and then this after. I've got to play around with it and practice, and because of that I'm going to have to do this off camera. So when I am satisfied with the ballast, I shall incorporate the PVA water mix, and that will soak in and obviously stick the ballast down. So I'll see you in a minute, and fingers crossed. Right, let's talk about ballast. I happen to have 2 bags of ballast here from my model railway. This is what I use to lay down on the tracks. It's fairly convenient, and it's not badly priced. I got £3 on this, but I got a feeling that that was some years ago I bought this. They're probably about £4.50 a bag now. They're great, but the problem is that you need so many different colours and textures that you end up costing you an arm and a leg. So even though I've got these bags here, what I've done, I've gone out in my garden and I've picked up some gravel, in this container. One end I've drilled 3mm holes, the other end I've drilled 5. I put my gravel in there and I shake it into another box. So I'm separating the small from the large, and then once the 3mm has been sieved through, I then sieve through it again using a tea strainer, and that's where I get this. Now this is genuine garden mud, and this has taken me about 20 minutes to generate. So prior to that I had the 3mm mixed, which is this here, and that is the 5mm, and this is what was left of the larger stuff. Now I've got something else here. This is ballast media that I scrounged from work. It might come in handy for something, but it's very fine, but nonetheless it might come in handy for something. I've got PVA tap water mix with a drop of fairy liquid to break down the surface tension, and I've got genuine PVA glue. Now I'm hoping to use some of these ballast. I don't know what yet. I need to have a look. I'm going to go on YouTube and get some inspiration and see what I can do. So the next clip we'll be looking at the diorama, which will be painted and all ready to bring out the artist in me, I suppose. So I'll see you then. Right, I've progressed a little bit further than I was hoping, because I got engrossed with it and I was on a bit of a roll. What I was going to show you was the actual finish of the tracks after the ballast had been applied, and I've actually gone on a little bit further than that. Now I wanted to create a shallower trough here, and I used this media here, which was a mistake really. I should have used some smaller stuff, because what's happened is once I've laid this down and gone over and laid the mud over the top of it, without me knowing, as I was laying the white PVA glue there, it was washing up the larger media underneath, and of course I didn't notice that until the glue had gone off and gone transparent, that I'd realised that what had happened. So these are slightly overscale, so I've learnt my lesson there. I need to use smaller ballast next time to pack something out if I have to. Now I created a dark brown wash. It was like 10% paint, 90% water, and I painted the actual garden mud once it had dried to give a different effect to the rest of it. This, what I've laid down on the edges here, is the natural garden mud, so I'm not going to do anything with that, and it all went down quite well using that PVA glue, and I'm sort of well impressed with the way it's turned out. Now you'll notice I've got some trees here. My neighbour happened to see me scooping up the gravel the other day to filter this media out. She asked me what I was doing, and she's a widow. Her husband Pete, a nice fella, I always got on well with Pete, unfortunately died about 3 years ago, and he had a huge model railway layout up in his attic, and she asked me if I'd like some trees, and she gave me this. She gave me a bloody great bag of trees that Pete had obviously hadn't attached to his layout, so I was well chuffed that she gave me those. So that's where the trees have come from. Now the next step is down here. I'm going to lay grass. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with this up here yet. I'm undecided. I'm going to have to lay some grass along here, and in the middle of there and this area here. I've got nothing that can represent grass. I've ended up having to have a go at going to my local model shop, which in all honestly should have been open on Monday, but I got there and he was closed. I was a bit pissed off about that, so I came home, I went on Amazon and I managed to order some scenic grass, and it's a mixture. I've got 4 different types, 2mm and 4mm. It's part of a starter kit apparently. That was $12.99 and it was on my doorstep within 2 days of me ordering it. As much as I like to support my local model shops, there are times when I wish to Christ why I bother really. But there you go. I've got my grass. You're supposed to use a static applicator or something, and I've looked at them and they're horrendously expensive, and I'm not going down the route of buying one of those. So I'm going to see how this spreads using a shaker. Now I haven't got a shaker, but I intend to make one and give it a practice and see what happens. Hopefully it will look okay. It'll probably look better than buying grass mats anyway. So this is my next stage, what I've got to do. I'm going to practice with this. If I'm happy with it, I shall start applying the grass. So what I'll do now is I'll go and do that. I shall probably in the next clip go back to the tank, because the tank is going to need weathering now. Now I know what shade I will need to weather the tank. I can go ahead and do that, and I am actually at the moment painting the figures. So I'll see you in the next clip. Right at the beginning of the video I did say that this is likely to be a bit fragmented, and where I should be showing you the tank and its pristine green paint job, unfortunately I've sort of progressed from there. In fact, I've actually finished the build, the painting and the weathering of this tank. So apologies for not showing you any of the other bits, but I was at a stage where I was on such a roll that I didn't really want to stop, and sometimes you forget about the camera as well. So this is where we are with it. Now after it had the green paint applied, the 324, I then gloss coated it, which enabled me to apply the decals, because applying decals on a matte surface is a big no-no. So once the decals were applied, I then treated it to a dark brown wash, and this is 10% paint, 90% water, and all I've done was I mixed it up into this, got a nice soft bristle brush and just loaded the brush and just went all over it and flooded everything. Now it seems a bit extreme, but what happens is that that wash actually lays within the details of the actual tank. It's like dry brushing in a way, and what you do is once you've flooded it all, you just let it dry, and what you get is a slight brown tint. I don't know if you can see that. I know that the bloody light in this shed's crap, but it's got rid of the obviously pristine looking green. And obviously what I'd done was, as I said, I applied the decals, because there's nothing worse than doing all the weathering and then put these perfect decals back on. You need to weather it with the decals really to get this brown staining. So when that was done and dried, I then weathered it. Now, weathering powders. I've had experience of weathering with powders. I weathered my rolling stock from the model railway. I used weathering powders for that, and I sealed it with funny enough hairspray, and it worked really well. I was contemplating trying hairspray on this, but I wasn't too sure if it was going to react with the paints or not. So yeah, weathering powders, horrendously expensive things. What I tend to do, I tend to go and buy things like this. These are pigments, basically crayons. You can buy a set. I think I bought 36 of these sticks. This is the actual length, and they come in a big box, all different colours. And what I do with those is I stick one of these in a self-sealed bag, get the Mrs. rolling pin, give it a good old bash, and then roll it, and hey presto, you've got cheap weathering powders. Now I've got about 24 bags of these, and each bag will fill up one of these Tamiya bottles. So it's a really cheap way of buying weathering powders. That I think I paid about £13 for that set of these. I don't know how much weathering powders are to buy. I guess they're about £4.50. I might be wrong, but you know, it's bloody expensive. So that's what I use there, and then this is a trick that I came across when I was planning on weathering me rolling stock on my railway, and I saw a bloke doing it. He actually got a Stanley blade and scraped it with a Stanley blade into a vessel like this, and he used it that way, but I tend to smash them up and get rid of the box, because the boxes are a bloody nuisance stocking them. And yeah, I stick them in these Tamiya bottles. I don't throw anything away. So I used a dark brown powder on those wheels, and I put it on fairly heavy down here, and gradually put less and less on. So that's been weathered with a wash and powders. Now obviously those powders won't stay on there, so what I've done then is I've sprayed it all over with matte coat, and that has sealed it now. So there you go, folks. Now I'm hoping to probably do another one of these. I'm quite enjoying this, and I'll probably go into a bit more detail on the next one, so I can show you the methods, etc., that I use. It's not necessarily a how-to video, this, as I've said before, but just showing you how I go about it. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish off the diorama, because I've cracked on with that, and that's turned out really nice. I'm well chuffed with that, and in the next clip I shall show you the diorama, and after that I shall introduce the tank to it and the figures, and then we'll see the final product then. So I'll see you in the next clip. Right, well there she is, my very first diorama. I'm quite happy with the way it's come out. I've made a few mistakes, and I shall learn from them. The first thing I'd done wrong really was I sprinkled this grass. I didn't use a shaker bottle, and I find it looks okay. I mean, it's never going to look as good as if you use a static applicator, but you know, it looks okay. While I was sprinkling this between my fingers, and some of it dropped down on here, and I wasn't all that concerned about it because I knew there wasn't any glue down here. But following day I went to tip it upside down and tap it, and found that it didn't move. And I think the problem lies with the PVAs not going off. This was laid down 2 days ago, and that is still soft on top of there. I apply a neat PVA on the surface, sprinkle the grass, and then I sort of spray a 50-50 PVA mix over it, and it's that mix that seems to take forever to bloody dry. So I'd like to try and find something different than that to use next time. The grass effect is turned out okay. I've done a bit of airbrushing here. I've got a light brown that I just went over the grass because it could have done with looking a bit more muddy like. So other than the track on that side there, which is not as good as this looks really nice and realistic, this bit. Other than that, it turned out all right. So let's introduce the tank, which goes there. Now, I had 6 figures with the kit. I originally thought when I first went through the instructions that you had a choice of either making these 2 or these 2, because the arms and legs were all separate. But when I got round to doing the figures, it seemed like they were 2 extra figures that you could make. So I decided to make those. There's another figure depicting a Frenchman with his cart of provisions, offering them to the tank crew. I haven't bothered doing that one. I shall probably keep that little sub-assembly and use it on a future diorama, I think, because I don't have the room for it. Yeah, so I'm real chuffed with the way the kit turned out with those extra figures, and I'm happy with the way that the tank was weathered. I mean, there's room for improvement there, but I think it looks okay. So I shall probably do another tank diorama soon, and I shall probably elaborate on camera what I do in regards to weathering and things. And I was out of my comfort zone, as I said at the beginning of the video, and I wasn't too sure if I've had the confidence to show you on camera, but I've got my confidence now, so the next one I'll go into more detail. So thanks for watching, and I hope to get a couple more plastic kits up on my channel soon. I've actually started a Suzuki Katana motorcycle, and I downed tools on it because I was so keen to get this going. So I've got about a third of the way through a motorcycle build, so that shouldn't be long following through as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon, hopefully. Stay safe out there, and see you soon. Bye.